Okay, let's get into it. The question is, did the New Testament writings teach the commandments? We have to consider a couple of things. The Messiah, his disciples, and the apostles taught from the Old Testament writings. Even though you may not always see the commandments quoted directly, their doctrine is anchored in the Torah, the laws, statutes, and commandments of Yah. Let's bring some clarity here of the question, what is sin? Well, 1 John chapter 3 verse 4 says, whoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law. So if we are going to go by the Bible, interpreting the Bible, the origin of the word sin here means to violate Yah's law. Sin is when you violate Yah's law. So the Messiah, the apostles, the disciples would never teach you to violate Yah's law. So when the Messiah was raised from the dead and he was walking among the earth and the people were reasoning among themselves, he said something to them in Luke chapter 24. Let's start at verse 25. Then he said unto them, O fools, and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Ought not Mashiach, aka Christ, to have suffered these things and to enter into his glory? Look what verse 27 says. And beginning at Moses, who wrote the Torah and who wrote the law, and beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded unto them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. You have to remember, they did not have a New Testament. He was pulling from the Torah, from the law, from Moses and the prophets, and he was expounding in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. So let's take a look at a few New Testament examples where they are clearly expounding from the commandments in the Old Testament. Let's look at the guy people love to quote the most in the churches, the Apostle Paul. Ephesians chapter 6 verses 1 through 3. Children, obey your parents in Yahweh, for this is right. Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. Now let's go back to the commandments in Exodus chapter 20, and we will see exactly which commandment this is. All right, Exodus chapter 20, verse 12, it says, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which Yahweh thy Elohim giveth thee. That's what he was referencing. Clear as day. As we continue to read these, you will notice that the writers of the New Testament, when they're referencing the laws, statutes, and commandments of Yah, you will see that their writings overlap and expound on the commandments. So you'll see a theme here. 1 Peter chapter 4 verse 15. Let's see what Peter has to say about it. But let none of you suffer as a murderer, or as a thief, or as an evildoer, or as a busybody in other men's matters. So we have right here murderer and thief. Okay, we're gonna look at that in Exodus 20, but this word murderer here means a murderer. Someone, what does a murderer do? They kill, right? That's how murder is committed, homicide. Now, let's look at the word thief. That word thief means thief. It also references a false teacher, but we're not going to cover that today. But that word thief derives from another word, which means to take away by theft, take away by stealth. Okay? We're going to look at that in Exodus 20. We're going to look at murderer and thief. All right, Exodus chapter 20, verse 13 through 15 say, "Thou shalt not kill." There's kill right there. A murderer kills. "Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal." There goes that word steal. We saw it in its form of thief when Peter talked about it. So if you click on that word steal, it means to steal away, to get by stealth. Peter was teaching in the context of the commandments. Plain as day. All right, let's see what John has to say in 1 John chapter 5, verse 21. At the very end of his letter in 1 John, he says, "Little children, keep yourselves from idols." Idol worship. That word idol means an image. Worshiping idols, an image, likeness, whatever represents the form of an object, either real or imaginary, a false god. Let's go over to Exodus 20 and let's see about these images. All right, so Exodus chapter 20, verse 3, starting at verse 3, it says, "Thou shalt not have no other gods before me." Look at verse 4. "Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth." John was saying, keep yourself from idols. Keep yourself from worshiping false gods. Right here, he says, have no other gods before him. He also says, don't make any graven image or any likeness of anything. That's what John was referencing. I think the point has been made, but let's look at a few more. James chapter 2, starting at verse 8. "If ye fulfill the royal law according to the scripture, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, ye do well. But if ye have respect to persons, ye commit sin, and are convinced of the law as transgressor. For whosoever shall keep the whole law, and yet offend in one point, he is guilty of all. For he that said, do not commit adultery, said also, do not kill. Now if thou commit no adultery, yet if thou kill, thou art become a transgressor of the law." James is referencing the commandments. Let's look at Revelation chapter 21, verse 8, where it talks about who is going to go into the lake of fire. Revelation chapter 21, verse 8. Let's see if we can notice a theme here. "But the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and murderers," we looked that up, that's the commandments, "and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters," there's another commandment reference. These are all referencing violation of the Torah, of the commandments, "and all liars," that's talking about bear false witness, but we'll talk about that another day, "shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death." So he's talking about violating the commandments, and he even points out some things that are written in the commandments of those that are gonna go to the lake of fire. Let's look at some dialogue that's going on with the Messiah in Mark chapter 10, starting at verse 17 through 22. And when he was gone forth into the way, there came one running and kneeled to him and asked him, Good master, what shall I do that I may inherit eternal life? And Yahushua said unto him, Why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, that is Elohim, who is Yah. Yah is Elohim. Verse 19, Thou knowest the commandments. Do not commit adultery. Do not kill. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness. Defraud not. Honor thy father and mother. Verse 20, And he answered and said unto him, Master, all these have I observed from my youth. Then Yahushua, beholding him, loved him, and said unto him, One thing thou lackest. Go thy way, sell whatsoever thou hast, and give to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven, and come, take up the cross, and follow me. Verse 22, And he was sad at that saying, and went away grieved, for he had great possessions. We see right here, this man is asking Yahushua directly, what must he do that he may inherit eternal life? And Yahushua says, you know the commandments. And then he tells him the commandments. And then he challenges him of his understanding of the commandments and pointed out that he wasn't keeping him the way he thought he was. That's why the man went away the way he did. Let's take a look at Matthew chapter 15 when Yahushua is conversing with the Pharisees. Look at verse 1. Matthew chapter 15 verse 1. Then came to Yahushua scribes and Pharisees, which were of Jerusalem, saying, Why do thy disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? For they wash not their hands when they eat bread. But he answered and said unto them, Why do ye also transgress the commandment of Elohim by your tradition? For Elohim commanded, saying, Honor thy father and mother, and he that curseth father or mother, let him die the death. But ye say, whosoever shall say to his father or his mother, It is a gift, by whatsoever thou mightest be profited by me, and honor not his father or his mother, he shall be free. Thus have ye made the commandment of Elohim of none effect by your tradition. Ye hypocrites, well did Esaias prophesy of you, saying, This people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth, and honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Right here, Yahushua points out that they transgress the commandments of Yah with their traditions. And that's what we see all over the place. Now, this last point here that I want to bring out, Yahushua and his followers and the apostles after the resurrection kept the Sabbath. While Yahushua was on the earth walking before he got crucified, he kept the Sabbath. And then we're going to show how after he was raised from the dead, his apostles kept the Sabbath. So let's deal with what he did pre-crucifixion. Luke chapter 4 verse 16. And when he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and stood up for to read. And there was delivered unto him the book of the prophet Isaiah. And when he opened the book, he found the place where it was written. Now let's take a look at Acts chapter 13. This is after the resurrection of the Messiah, when the apostles are doing their thing. Acts chapter 13, verses 14 through 16. But when they departed from Perga, they came to Antioch in Pisidia, and went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and sat down. And after the reading of the law and the prophets, the rulers of the synagogue sent unto them, saying, Ye men and brethren, if ye have any word of exhortation for the people, say on. Then Paul stood up, and beckoning with his hand said, Men of Israel, and ye that fear Elohim, give audience. So right here, we see that they gathered on the Sabbath day. Even after the Messiah was raised, their day of gathering was on the Sabbath day. They kept the Sabbath. So if we go back to Exodus chapter 20, it's plain as day. Let's take a look. Look at what they say in verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. That word holy means to be set apart, to be consecrated. So the apostles were still setting apart the Sabbath day to worship Yah. When Yahushua walked the earth, he set apart the Sabbath day to worship Yah. They gathered together on the Sabbath day. They set the day apart to worship Yah. The seventh day is the Sabbath. It's also a day to rest from all your labor. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath. He gave you a day to rest. So the point has been made, and it's clear as day, that even in the New Testament writings, the commandments were taught and expounded upon, and they are still relevant and valid today, because Yah does not change. I'm going to leave you with this final thought. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 19, Paul says, circumcision is nothing, and uncircumcision is nothing, but the keeping of the commandments of Elohim. Paul says, circumcision and uncircumcision is nothing, but the keeping of the commandments of Yah. In John chapter 14, verse 15, from the Messiah himself, if ye love me, keep my commandments.